before Robert Redford ever stepped onto a film set with Barbra Streisand. He had already built a reputation as an actor who could command both comedy and drama with effortless confidence. But nothing could have prepared Hollywood for what happened when the two finally shared the screen. Their chemistry in The Way We Were didn't just light up theaters, it became a cultural phenomenon that audiences never forgot. Yet behind that unforgettable connection lay a truth that fans never saw. For decades, people begged for a reunion, hoping Redford and Streisand would come together once more. But something happened during that first collaboration. Something powerful enough to ensure they would never stand side by side in another film again. And the reason, long buried in silence, is far more complicated than anyone ever imagined. For years, Robert Redford kept his silence, letting rumors swirl while fans begged for answers. Now, as the truth finally begins to surface, the real story of what happened between two Hollywood legends becomes far more personal than anyone ever imagined. Long before fame hardened his edges, Redford was shaped by a quiet childhood in Santa Monica, where discipline and warmth lived under the same roof. His father, a firm and responsible man, taught him structure, while his mother fueled his imagination with unwavering encouragement. That balance gave Redford a strong foundation, but it also sparked a restlessness inside him, a need to explore something deeper than the safe path laid out before him. He sketched constantly, played baseball to blend in, and escaped into movie theaters where stories felt bigger and more meaningful than anything in his ordinary world. Yet, even with those early passions, nothing pointed to a clear future. Instead, it planted the seeds of a creative hunger he couldn't yet understand as he grew older. That restlessness turned into a sharp discomfort with anything predictable. Santa Monica was beautiful, but to Redford it felt too small, too easy, too expected. He didn't want a neat, controlled life. He wanted room to breathe, to break rules, to find something that made him feel alive. But his world collapsed when his mother died far too young. Losing the one person who believed in his creativity left him drifting in emotional shadows he didn't know how to navigate. His confidence cracked, his direction disappeared, and for a long time he wandered through life without a map. What followed was a chaotic stretch of missteps and searching. After high school, Redford drowned uncertainty in alcohol, bounced between meaningless jobs, and moved around with no real destination. Nothing felt right, and nothing filled the quiet emptiness left by his mother's absence. Even when he earned a baseball scholarship to the University of Colorado, his inner turmoil sabotaged it. Drinking cost him the scholarship, and he walked away from college entirely. It was a low, unsteady moment, yet one that pushed him into the transformation he desperately needed, instead of collapsing under failure. Redford fled to Europe. There, surrounded by art, culture, and unfamiliar streets, he began to reconnect with himself. Studying painting opened emotional doors he had kept shut for years, and the distance from home gave him clarity he couldn't find before. Slowly, he started to understand that creativity wasn't just a hobby for him, it was the only place he ever felt whole. When he returned to the United States, he followed that instinct all the way to New York City, where he stepped into the gritty world of theater and discovered something that changed everything. Acting wasn't just performance, it blended emotion, imagination, discipline, pain, freedom, and vulnerability. It felt like all the pieces of his life finally fit together. Redford committed fully. He enrolled at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, pushing himself with a seriousness that surprised even him. Every class, every rehearsal, every failure became fuel. And slowly, the restless boy from Santa Monica began shaping himself into the man who would one day captivate the world. An actor powerful enough to stand opposite Barbra Streisand, create one of Hollywood's most unforgettable pairings, and carry a secret from that collaboration that he would not reveal for decades. As Robert Redford trained in New York, he began shaping himself into the kind of actor audiences couldn't ignore. He learned to control his voice, his posture, and the quiet power of presence, slowly replacing years of drifting with a newfound discipline. His early stage roles in productions like The Iceman, Cometh, and Barefoot in the Park revealed an intensity that didn't rely on noise or theatrics. He drew people in through subtlety, stillness, and emotional truth. Crowds began to sense there was something different about him, something honest and grounded. Television soon amplified that impression. Guest appearances on popular programs introduced him to millions, and his cool, steady demeanor made him stand out in a time when many actors chased exaggerated performances. Directors liked his restraint, his control, and the quiet charisma he carried without effort. By the early 1960s, he had built a reputation inside the industry as a serious, dependable actor on the rise. His move into film only confirmed it. Even in supporting roles, Redford carried a weight that felt real, and Hollywood quickly recognized he had both the face of a leading man and the depth of a craftsman. Stardom arrived swiftly with Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and The Sting, films that exploded his career and turned him into one of the most recognizable names in the world. His partnership with Paul Newman became iconic, and his blend of charm, intelligence, and emotional control made audiences feel connected to him in a way few actors could achieve. But with fame came discomfort. Redford disliked the publicity machine, the staged interviews, and the feeling of being shaped by studio expectations. beneath the success. He was becoming a man who valued independence more than applause, and those early tensions would later play a major role in how he handled certain collaborations. While Redford quietly built his career, Barbra Streisand was rising along an entirely different path, fueled not by quiet intensity but by fierce determination born from hardship. Growing up in a struggling Brooklyn household, her childhood was marked by loss, instability, and constant financial pressure. Her father died when she was still young, leaving her mother to raise her and her brother with limited means. Small apartments, frequent moves, and the constant awareness of money shaped her into someone who understood early that she would have to push for everything she wanted. Even as a child, Streisand showed an extraordinary spark singing around the house, performing for anyone who would listen, and watching how her voice could transform the atmosphere. That natural talent, combined with a relentless will to rise above her circumstances, became the foundation of a meteoric career that would one day collide with Redford's in a way Hollywood would never forget. Barbra Streisand's voice was the first thing people ever noticed about her. Even as a child, it carried a strength and emotional depth far beyond her age. But while her talent stood out, she often felt like she didn't fit in. Classmates teased her about her appearance, and she grew up believing she didn't match the image of what a young performer was supposed to look like. Instead of breaking her spirit, that sense of being an outsider became the fuel that pushed her forward. She wasn't going to let anyone else decide her worth. She was determined to rise, not because she looked the part, but because she could outwork, outsing, and outshine anyone who doubted her. As a teenager, she turned that determination into action. She began performing in small clubs around Greenwich Village, a neighborhood where art and creativity thrived. Her early performances were raw, unapologetic, and unforgettable. Her voice wasn't gentle or traditionally polished, it was bold, piercing, and filled with personality, instantly commanding every room she stepped into. Word spread quickly. She wasn't just good, she was different. That difference became her strength. Soon, Broadway came calling, and when she landed the lead role in Funny Girl, everything changed. Audiences fell in love with her confidence, humor, vulnerability, and fearlessness. The role didn't just make her famous, it shaped her. It introduced the world to the version of Barbra Streisand who would dominate the industry. Sharp, witty, deeply emotional, and relentlessly perfectionistic. Record labels quickly recognized her star power. Her albums climbed the charts. Her voice filled radio stations and television screens, and her concerts drew massive crowds. She wasn't simply a singer, she was a phenomenon. Her early success gave her a level of influence that was almost unheard of for someone her age, especially a woman rising during that era. People took her seriously because she earned that respect through pure talent and sheer determination. And with the music world conquered, she stepped into film with the same confidence. Her movie debut in the film version of Funny Girl earned her an Academy Award, and projects like Hello Dolly expanded her reach even further. Her talent wasn't limited to one medium. She excelled wherever she went. But Streisand wanted more than fame. She wanted control. She didn't want to simply act. She didn't want to shape the stories themselves. She pushed into producing, and eventually directing, long before Hollywood was willing to accept women in those roles. Her perfectionism sometimes intimidated people, but it also earned respect. She demanded excellence because she believed the audience deserved nothing less. Whether people agreed with her methods or not, no one could deny her brilliance or her vision. By the time The Way We Were came along, Streisand had become a powerhouse. She loved the script, the layered emotions, and the complicated love story at its core. But she knew the film would only work if the male lead could match her intensity with equal depth. From the very beginning, she fought for Robert Redford. She believed his calm, grounded presence would balance her passion and create a dynamic that felt real and unforgettable. Redford, however, hesitated. He admired her talent and respected her success, but he feared the film might become too centered on her character. Streisand was already a massive star, and her performances often dominated the screen. Redford didn't want to be reduced to a background figure or a supporting presence in a story that needed both characters to shine equally. His hesitation set the stage for the complex, delicate partnership that would follow and for the tension that would quietly shape everything that happened next. Redford hesitated for reasons deeper than what anyone on the outside could see. He knew stepping into a film with Barbra Streisand meant stepping into an on-screen dynamic where her intensity, passion, and powerful emotional presence naturally drew focus. He worried audiences and Hollywood itself would see him as nothing more than a handsome counterpart rather than an equally layered character. The studio understood his concern immediately. They revised the script, added more emotional space for his character, strengthened his motivations, and assured him the story would honor both leads equally. Only after those adjustments did he reluctantly agree, unknowingly setting the stage for one of cinema's most unforgettable pairings. Once the cameras rolled, it became clear that Redford and Streisand shared an electric chemistry. Everyone on set felt it. Their characters, Katie and Hubble, clashed and connected in ways that mirrored the actors themselves. Redford's style was quiet, precise, and internal. He relied on small shifts in expression and controlled emotion. Streisand, In contrast, attacked scenes with raw vulnerability and fearless openness. She followed emotion wherever it led her, even if it meant pushing beyond the script. Their opposing methods created friction, small disagreements about line delivery, tension over how emotional moments should unfold, and debates over improvisation versus structure. But those differences also created a spark that translated directly onto the screen, off-camera. Their relationship was much more nuanced. Between takes, they shared soft, genuine conversations about their early struggles, their views on fame, and the weight of expectation. Redford respected Streisand's ambition, intelligence, and the fire that drove her. Streisand admired his calm confidence and the quiet discipline he brought to every moment. Despite their artistic clashes, there was a real curiosity between them, and that connection gave their on-screen romance a believable depth. Audiences instantly fell in love with but beneath the warmth, Redford carried private doubts that never left him. Streisand's presence, her voice, her energy, her emotional power filled every inch of the set. He admired her talent deeply, yet he sometimes felt overshadowed by it. As filming continued, he noticed the story slowly shifting toward her character's emotional arc, and he quietly wondered whether the balance he had been promised was slipping away. It wasn't jealousy. It was a fear of losing artistic identity in a film that was becoming more aligned with Streisand's interpretation than the collaborative vision he had agreed to. The press added another layer of tension. Both actors were major stars, and the media loved to fabricate romantic narratives whenever two people shared chemistry on screen. Redford hated that attention. He valued privacy fiercely, and working with someone as famous as Streisand made him feel exposed in ways he deeply disliked. The idea of their partnership becoming a tabloid spectacle unsettled him, and those quiet worries followed him long after filming wrapped. When The Way We Were became a massive success, the industry pushed hard for a reunion. Studios pitched sequels, sent scripts, and made offers that would have reunited the pair in a heartbeat. Redford always responded with polite refusals. He said he was busy, that the timing wasn't right, or that the story didn't resonate, but his private answer was always the same. Streisand, however, hoped they would work together again. She saw the magic of their pairing and believed they could recreate it. Redford didn't share that belief. The intensity, the imbalance, the pressure, and the emotional weight of their first collaboration stayed with him. That experience, memorable and complicated as it was, made him certain of one thing. He didn't want to step into that dynamic ever again. Barbra Streisand, too, genuinely believed that the magic between her and Robert Redford wasn't just a one-time spark, but the kind of rare chemistry that could captivate audiences again and again. She admired the balance they created together, the emotional electricity, and the natural push and pull that made The Way We Were unforgettable. She made her interest clear in interviews, at industry gatherings, and through private conversations, never demanding, but always hopeful. Redford, however, handled every suggestion with calm restraint. He never dismissed her, never disrespected her, and never allowed the industry to twist his refusals into negativity. He simply kept his boundaries firm without ever fully explaining the real reasons behind them. Over time, pieces of the truth slipped through, revealing a complicated mix of personal discomfort and professional caution. Redford felt Streisand's perfectionism, though admirable, tightened the creative space around him. Her need to control details, shape scenes, and refine emotional beats left him with little room for the spontaneity he relied on. He respected her dedication, but their artistic rhythms pulled in opposite directions. He feared that working with her again would place him in her gravitational field, overshadowing his own instincts and identity. Streisand's energy filled every room she entered. Her presence was powerful, intense, and deeply emotional. Redford, who worked with quiet precision, often felt drained by the emotional weight she brought to each moment. It wasn't conflict, it was mismatch. His privacy added another layer. Redford hated gossip and avoided romantic speculation at all costs, but the media loved pairing him with Streisand, turning their on-screen romance into rumors about their personal lives. He felt exposed, misunderstood, and frustrated that a professional collaboration became a tabloid fantasy. Streisand remained graceful through it all. She never pushed him publicly or created drama, but she couldn't hide her disappointment. She had seen something rare in their connection, something worth revisiting. Redford simply didn't feel the same way. He knew that stepping back into that dynamic would cost him emotionally, creatively, and personally. The experience had been meaningful, but repeating it felt overwhelming in the years that followed. Their careers went in separate directions, each building incredible accomplishments on their own terms. They crossed paths occasionally at award shows, industry events, and quiet gatherings. Each time, their interactions were warm, respectful, and brief, an exchanged smile. A light conversation, a moment of shared history. There was no bitterness, no unresolved tension. Just a gentle distance that Redford preferred and Streisand accepted, even if she never fully understood it. Despite that distance, the admiration between them never faded. Streisand often praised Redford's evolution into directing, speaking highly of the sensitivity and intelligence in films like Ordinary People and Quiz Show. Quietly and consistently, respected her artistic courage and the way she reinvented herself again and again. They were never close friends, never collaborators after that first moment of magic, but they carried a lasting respect and unspoken acknowledgement of what they created together and why they could never create it again. Barbra Streisand admired Robert Redford in ways she rarely admitted publicly. She recognized not only his talent as an actor, but also the remarkable skill it took to step behind the camera and shape entire stories with quiet power. She respected his ability to guide performances, navigate difficult themes, and build films that were thoughtful, emotional, and deeply human. To her, this wasn't just talent, it was courage. And whenever she spoke about him, she never hid her respect. Redford, in his own understated way, felt the same about her. He watched her reinvent herself again and again, surviving changes in music, film, and pop culture while refusing to compromise who she was. He admired her willingness to take risks at a time when Hollywood rarely allowed women to direct, produce, or control their own creative paths. He understood how difficult that fight was, and even though he didn't express it openly, he appreciated her strength. Their connection, as complicated as it had been, settled into something quieter over time. The intense spark they shared during filming matured into a subtle bond built on memory and mutual understanding. They had seen each other in moments of vulnerability, ambition, frustration, and raw emotion more than most co-stars ever witness. They didn't need constant communication or public gestures to maintain that connection. It simply existed, silent but steady, a reminder of a shared chapter that had shaped them both. Through the 1990s and early 2000s, studios repeatedly tried to bring them back together. Executives knew the world would explode with excitement at the sight of Redford and Streisand reunited on screen. Handsome offers, carefully written scripts, and passionate pitches were presented, and some projects came surprisingly close. But no matter how promising the idea looked, Redford always pulled away before it became real. Behind that quiet refusal was a long internal battle that most people never knew about. Years before he became a Hollywood icon, Redford had slipped into drinking during his bohemian travels through Europe. Late nights in small bars, smoky cafes, and artist hangouts made alcohol feel like part of the lifestyle. It was a way to loosen the knots of self-doubt and blend into a world that didn't judge him. At the time, drinking seemed harmless, just another part of being young and uncertain. But those habits lingered, and as fame tightened around him, alcohol quietly evolved from a distraction into an escape. Redford was admired for his calm under pressure, but inside he felt overwhelmed. Interviews, public expectations, and the constant scrutiny of being a leading man made him feel exposed and uneasy. Alcohol softened that pressure, and over time it became a private comfort he increasingly relied on. The way we were only intensified these emotions. The emotional depth of the film, combined with the intense media obsession surrounding him and Streisand, pushed him into a spotlight he never wanted. Rumors spread, headlines exaggerated their relationship, and fans speculated endlessly. Redford hated that kind of attention. The more success the film earned, the more he felt the walls closing in. Outwardly he remained composed, but privately he struggled with a growing habit he could no longer ignore. People close to him began noticing the subtle shifts, moments of withdrawal, mood changes, and an emotional heaviness he tried to hide. Redford prided himself on discipline and independence, yet alcohol blurred those values, creating an inner conflict he couldn't easily escape. He wanted control over his career, his image, and his emotions, but the more he tried to manage everything alone, the heavier the burden became. Though Robert Redford carried himself with calm discipline, drinking quietly chipped away at the control he valued so deeply. He was painfully aware of it. The tension between the man he wanted to be and the habits he relied on created an inner frustration he rarely shared. Working with strong personalities often intensified these feelings, and Barbra Streisand had been one of the most memorable examples. Her bold confidence, emotional range, and high standards pushed him creatively, but they also stirred insecurities he tried hard to hide. She was expressive and fearless. He was internal and reserved. After filming, he sometimes replayed scenes in his mind, wondering if he had given enough, if he had matched her energy, if he had let his doubts show. Alcohol softened those worries temporarily, even as it added new burdens he didn't know how to let go of. His relationships felt the impact as well. Redford wasn't someone who opened up. He kept his struggles private, and that emotional distance often left people around him confused or shut out. He didn't lash out, didn't create drama, but the quiet gaps in his presence were noticeable. Under the composed surface was a man disappointed in himself, even if he rarely admitted it aloud. The turning point came when he was finally confronted with a moment he couldn't ignore, whether a health scare, a painful conversation, or a silent realization only he witnessed. Whatever it was strong enough to shake him awake. He saw clearly that he couldn't continue carrying a private weight that was slowly draining him. So he took steps, quiet but firm, to rebuild control and reclaim his life in the disciplined way he had always wanted. Years later, when news of his passing broke, the world felt the loss instantly. On September 16, 2025, Robert Redford died at the age of 89 in his beloved home in Sundance, high in the Utah mountains. According to his longtime publicist, he passed peacefully, surrounded by the people who mattered most to him. His family requested privacy, and no immediate cause of death was given, but the shock and sadness spread quickly. Major news outlets delivered the announcement as breaking news, honoring not just the legendary actor but the visionary director, producer, and environmental advocate who left an immeasurable impact on film and culture. Tributes poured in from around the world. Meryl Streep, his co-star in Out of Africa, called him one of the lions of cinema and mourned the loss of a dear friend. Jane Fonda, who had known him for decades, said the news hit her hard and described him as a beautiful soul both on screen and in life. Barbra Streisand released a deeply heartfelt message, remembering him as charismatic, intelligent, intense, and one of the finest actors she ever had the privilege of working with. Dustin Hoffman and journalist Bob Woodward spoke of his integrity and the quiet loyalty that defined him behind the scenes. Political leaders, festival organizers, and cultural icons joined the chorus, emphasizing the legacy he built not only through Hollywood but through Sundance, the festival that transformed independent cinema. Films like Precious, Manchester by the Sea, Get Out, and countless others found their path to the world because of what he created. His death didn't feel abrupt. It felt like the final chapter of a long, intentional life lived with purpose, precision, and artistry. Redford had been many things: an icon of the 1960s, a powerful director in the decades that followed, and a guiding force for young filmmakers who needed someone to believe in them. When he passed, he did so in the quiet place he loved, surrounded by the mountains that shaped him. After more than 60 years of transforming cinema, he left the world the same way he lived his life, with grace, dignity, and a legacy strong enough to last for generations.